You're listening to The World at 8 with Lynn Mozart. The World at 8, the number one in nationalist news.
Highlights of the news today, Wednesday the 28th of May 2014. Thought for the day, will we or won't we? Police investigate Attleborough Church hate incident after sign suggests non-Christians will burn in hell. Somerset paedophile escapes jail despite browsing indecent images of children in public libraries. Killer who strangled and stabbed gran for just £30 bought lottery ticket. Almost half of Czechs think EU vote is useless. That earthquake in Europe, its far-right gains in parliament elections. 6 legs tasty. First edible insect farm opens in US. Iran billionaire executed. And finally, 2 for 1 day. Thought for the day, will we or won't we? Well, excitement over for another 5 years, thank God. I have never seen so many untouchables chasing so many uneatables in a very long time. Of course we have our share of oh God we're finished grovel grovel combined with the ever ready illusions of leadership challenges in the air, and as we all know not only are these legal at this time, but who in their right mind would want to lead a so-called finished party? So results were exactly what we predicted. NG lost out, but good for him for trying what was an already lost cause, and we will have the marvellous benefit of him back in the UK and on the job with the British National Party full time. All winners, I believe. Remember, you never lose at chess, you merely come second. Leave Europe to the far right, bless them, to sort out. The UK is unhappily a very different kettle of stewed and rancid fish, I'm afraid to say. Well, not really afraid to say, of course. But will we, won't we go to the ball next year? I personally and frankly think it's a waste of time and energy. If we do stand parliamentary candidates, it will be just for show and putting our valuable people in line for some British National Party supporters to have a vote in a certain area. But when you get down to reality, why all the expense and trouble for a majority of people who in essence don't really care? The one thing about my thoughts is that they are just that, not party policy nor party motives or MOs for the future, but mine, all mine. With the result I can say what I feel without changing party policy or actions in any way. Apparently we are being exhorted to chase parish and local councillor places and take up local issues. Now we have in many areas not lost this particular cause, and indeed in the local elections on the 22nd won and kept more than a few of those, to which congratulations are in order. However, some people who listened to the interviews on World 8 and Monday apparently had problems with the statements over local councillors. Of course, Nick and I were talking about the ones who were not voted in again years ago, and the fact that HQ are thinking of training new people to apply for jobs as councillors, when the problem was in many cases the fact that many of these people were not trained to do the job once getting the job. The problem with what I call proper local councillors who are standing under the flag of the BNP occurred some years ago when in many regions new local BNP councillors got a great many council places. The problem wasn't the getting into council, it was the problem a few had with actually doing the job once there. Unattended meetings and vanishing acts and adverse publicity all took their toll, and these particular people were not voted in again, which was a blow to the party, but perhaps a necessary one. To be a local councillor you have to work, attend meetings at odd times and button your lip when needed. You also have to meet locals and help them. If you're not prepared to do the work, then don't apply and don't raise party hopes when you can't fulfil them. We have the same problem throughout the party with certain officials who take jobs offered in good faith and then let their regions down. I'm not talking about the majority of our organisers and contacts in the south who do excellent jobs and the few who also do very good job despite suffering from ill health, but I am talking about some people. A few who I will not name and shame who simply seem to enjoy having a title and doing bugger all to justify it, and in a certain case actually working against the party at certain times. We, more than any other political parties, seem to attract a different sort of person, both very good and very bad, and many who just feel that having a title means they don't have to work. Now let me tell you all, our chairman works his whatsits off, as do many of our higher ranking officials in HQ. They do several jobs bloody well, and believe me, all of us in Radio Britain and the British National Party rarely take time off. Work and hive mentality is what is core of all political parties. The BNP is not here to boost your ego, you are here to boost its ego. It's as simple as that. If the fire is too hot in the kitchen, get out. We are a leaner, meaner fighting machine and our officers must reflect that. True, we need training to do certain jobs which many of our newer officials have not received, but they will. Even in this day of the computer we need records kept, administration well up to date and flowcharts of what's going on where and at what time. In short, a central reference library of do's and don'ts available either online or for those without PCs in hard copy. Although one of the old prerequisites of being an organiser was the ability to operate a computer and know what to do with a membership list. The problem we're meeting as a political party is that a few years ago we took the establishment by storm and created a political maelstrom. One which the establishment took exception over and with the aid of traitors and the judicial system at their command started to purge the BNP, culminating in the reign of the anti-publicity media over the last 5 years. It also pushed the powers that be to create and back UKIP to be the protest vote for the undecided and weak in the UK, of which there is little shortage of anyway. Now, I'm not UKIP bashing because in a way I admire Farage for his ability to change ideals practically every day. You have to be either a retard or a genius to do it and get away with it, even in this unpoliticised and broken country. But if anyone with half a brain thinks that UKIP will ever leave the EU, then they are in La La Land. One of the newest ideals that UKIP is racist is also a mirage by Farage and a vote getting slipped for the fed up impinge brigade who wouldn't vote for outright nationalists because of course we are racist and far right. You know, concentration camps, deportations and death squads. UKIP will never leave the EU because it needs the EU to promote more immigration into this country for the sake of big business and corporations who in turn fund UKIP. The mantra of the growing elderly in the UK is used for the importing of young foreigners from the third world, as Farage doesn't like the Eastern Europeans, to buy food, goods, houses, businesses, etc. from big business and corporations in the UK. That is why we're all being propagandised into thinking immigration and immigrants per se are good for the economy. Yet another lie that has spread. My message to UKIP and the establishment is go live in enriched areas and see just how you like it. The British National Party will not go away, neither will it fold and neither will it kowtow to authorities it doesn't respect. The so-called far right is spreading in Europe, in France and Greece they did very well, but as usual not in the UK. Why? Hasn't the man in the street had enough yet? No, he's still revelling in the newfound lies of a recovery which is entirely a plastic bubble soon to burst. Most of our recovery is based on hundreds of wealthy or benefits aided migrants buying up and pushing up prices of ordinary property in the London and South East areas, whilst the interest rate is still the lowest ever and soon must rise for the would-be savers amongst us. So recovery? Based on inflated property prices and Chinese crap flying out of the Asian and Jewish owned stores, bollocks to that one. So no, let our Nigel revel for the moment. In fact, let's hope he does get into Parliament. Because as we know, nothing ever gets actually done or solved from anyone in Parliament or in government. That is not what they do, and in fact get paid heftily for doing the exact opposite of doing anything, and that is doing nothing. Something which Farage is well capable of doing. Our day will come, but not yet. UK news. Police investigate Attleborough church hate incident after sign suggests non-Christians will burn in hell. A South Norfolk church has agreed to remove a sign suggesting non-Christians would burn in hell after a complaint prompted a police investigation. The Attleborough Baptist Church sign was looked at as a hate incident after Robert Gladwin objected to the slogan, "If you think there is no God, you'd better be right," with flames underneath the message. But police said the pastor of the church had agreed to remove the sign. Mr Gladwin, 20, who spotted the sign on Keat Lees Lane while heading home to Harham Road, said, "I was just astounded, really. We live in the 21st century and they'd put that message, that non-Christians will burn in hell, up to try and scare people into joining their mentality." Mr Gladwin decided to contact the police after comparing the message to other forms of hate speech. Oh, really? A spokesman for the police said Norfolk Constabulary received a report regarding a poster outside a church in Attleborough which was deemed offensive by the complainant. National guidance required us to investigate the circumstances and the matter has been recorded as a hate incident. Having spoken to the pastor of the church, it has been agreed the poster will be taken down." Mr Gladwin added, "It's my basic understanding that Christianity is inclusive and loving in nature. The message being displayed outside the church could not be further from the often uttered phrase, 'Love thy neighbour.'" World at 8. Poppycock! It isn't saying, as some Muslim posters were saying, death to non-Muslims, is it? It's just saying if you don't believe in heaven and hell, get on with it. It isn't accusing non-Christians or Christians of burning in hell. How can you if you don't believe it anyway? Reinstate the poster. It's a good Christian message. And no, Christians are not all inclusive and loving in nature, nor are atheists or any other religion. Somerset paedophile escapes jail despite browsing indecent images of children in public libraries. A judge slammed a Somerset paedophile after he was caught browsing the internet for indecent images of children in a public library. Peter Hoare, 44, was arrested after officials discovered someone had been using the library network to trawl the web for vile pictures. They traced the pervert, who had logged on using his library card, to his home where officers found 66 images stored on a memory card. Hoare, who has a number of other convictions from child sex offences, was given his final warning after Judge David Ticehurst told him it was abundantly clear he needed help. Handing him 12 months behind bars, suspended for 2 years, Judge Ticehurst condemned the paedophile. He said, "It is abundantly clear that unless some further action is taken, you will continue to commit these offences." Taunton Crown Court heard that Hoare was arrested following a discovery by the Network and Security Services Manager for Somerset County Council, who was carrying out checks on the computer networks across the libraries in Somerset. World at 8. Suspended. Because our jails are too full of foreign rapists and paedophiles. What are we doing in this country anymore? Does anyone know or care? Killer who strangled and stabbed Gran for just £30 bought lottery ticket. A hard-up weirdo obsessed with winning the lottery was found guilty of murdering a kindly neighbour for just £30. Christian Darko, 41, originally from Ghana, took the money from Rose Doughty after stabbing and strangling her in her own home the day after her 72nd birthday. He spent it on cigarettes, lottery tickets and topping up his electricity within an hour of his horrific crime. He admitted manslaughter but denied murder on the grounds of diminished responsibility. His defence, tried to argue, had mild learning disabilities, an abnormality of mental functioning which impairs self-control and rational judgment. But a jury unanimously found him guilty of murder after 2.5 hours deliberation. A shout of yes, followed by crying, was heard in the public gallery after the guilty verdict was returned. The defendant showed no reaction in the dock. Rose, who lived alone, died with stab wounds to her neck, face and abdomen. Defensive injuries which he fought and grabbed the knife, and bruising. Her blood was found on gloves found in Darko's home. Twice married, Darko spent his benefits on the lottery, sometimes as much as £60 in a day. The unemployed former mechanic felt he needed to win to return home to Ghana, where he had a girlfriend and a baby. Darko, who had no previous convictions, will be sentenced later. World at 8. This awful crime should have had the publicity it deserves. Why is this black retard here? He isn't batty enough not to have married twice and killed once and bought the lottery. Deportation, not sentencing, should be the outcome, and branding so he cannot come back into the country. About election times our media go all soft and squidgy, don't they? European news. Almost half of Czechs think EU vote is useless. A poll for Czech TV after the country's EU election, closed Saturday, found that 48% of Czechs thought the vote was useless and will not change anything. The researchers linked the result with a record low turnout and said Czechs' basic identification with the EU was at stake. World at 8. They're right, of course. Where is Czechoslovakia anyway? The earthquake in Europe, its far-right gains in parliament elections according to CNN. France's far-right National Front has won a nationwide election for the first time as far-right parties across Europe caused a political earthquake with a string of victories in voting for the European Parliament. The National Front, led by Marine Le Pen, notched up 24.95% of the vote in France, according to official estimates, well ahead of mainstream parties UMP and the Socialist Party. Le Pen said the win showed that people want to see change in Europe. France's Socialist Prime Minister Manuel Valls said the result was more a warning, it is a shock and earthquake. Right-wing parties also gained ground in the UK, Denmark and Austria, according to projections posted on the European Parliament's official elections website. World at 8. Well, as the BNP is the only political so-called right-wing party in the UK, it sounds good, innit? World news. 6 legs, tasty. First edible insect farm opens in US. A twitching mass of European house crickets clings to a maze of mesh cardboard in a tent about the size of a minivan. They're inside their new home, an abandoned warehouse in Youngstown, Ohio, where they will prosper until being killed, ground into flour and baked into cookies and tortilla chips. These are the first insects in the US to be farmed for human consumption. Big Cricket Farms, the company running the warehouse, is working with insect food start-up 6 Foods in Boston, who will make the cricket chips, which they call chirps, and cookies. They are among many adventurous eaters hoping to carve out a niche for a protein-rich, environmentally friendly food source that could transform the modern diet. World at 8. Thankfully I hate cookies and tortilla chips anyway, and I love crickets. But as America is now mainly black or Mexican, it'll be dogs on the menu next, I fear. Iran billionaire executed. Tehran, a billionaire businessman at the heart of a $2.6 billion state bank scam, the largest fraud case since the country's 1979 Islamic Revolution, was executed Saturday, state television reported. Authorities put Maha Farid Amir Khosravi, also known as Amir Mansour Arya, to death at Evin prison just north of the capital Tehran, the station reported. The report said the execution came after Iran's Supreme Court upheld his death sentence. Khosravi's lawyer, Gholam Ali Riahi, was quoted by news website Khabar Online as saying that his client was put to death without any notice. "I had not been informed about execution of my client," Riahi said. "All of the assets of my client are at the disposal of the prosecutor's office." State officials did not immediately comment on Riahi's claim. The fraud involving using forged documents to get credit at one of Iran's top financial institutions, Bank Saderat, to purchase assets, including state-owned companies like major steel producer Khuzestan Steel Company. Khosravi's business empire included more than 35 companies, from mineral water production to a football club and meat imports from Brazil. According to Iranian media reports, the bank fraud began in 2007. A total of 39 defendants were convicted in the case. 4 received death sentences, 2 got life sentences, and the rest received sentences of up to 25 years in prison. The trials raised questions about corruption at senior levels in Iran's tightly controlled economy during the administration of former President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. Mahmoud Reza Kavari, a former head of Bank Melli, another major Iranian bank, escaped to Canada in 2011 after he resigned over the case. He faces charges over the case in Iran and remains on the Islamic Republic's wanted list. Kavari previously admitted that his bank partially was involved in the fraud, but has maintained his innocence. And finally, a 2-for-1 day. We've been concerned with political a-holes over the last 3 days, so here are some jokes about that. Holes. This concerns 3 thickets called Stu, Mick and Paddy. Stu died in a fire and his body was burnt pretty badly. The morgue needed someone to identify the body, so they sent for his 2 best friends, Mick and Paddy. The 3 men had always done everything together. Mick arrived first, and when the mortician pulled back the sheet, Mick said, "Yup, his face is burnt up pretty bad, you better roll him over." The mortician rolled him over and Mick said, "No, that ain't Stu." The mortician thought this was rather strange, so he brought Paddy in to confirm the identity of the body. Paddy looked at the body and said, "Yup, he pretty well burnt up, roll him over." The mortician rolled him over and Paddy said, "No, it ain't Stu." The mortician asked, "How can you tell?" Paddy said, "Well, Stu had 2 arseholes." "What? He had 2 arseholes?" asked the mortician. "Yup, we never seen 'em, but everybody used to say, 'There's Stu with them 2 arseholes.'" And then finally an old lady dies and goes to heaven. She's chatting it up with St. Peter at the pearly gates when all of a sudden she hears the most awful blood-curdling screams. "Don't worry about that," said St. Peter. "It's only someone having the holes drilled into her shoulder blades for the wings." The old lady looks a little uncomfortable but carries on with the conversation. A few minutes later there are more blood-curdling screams. "Oh my goodness," says the old lady. "Now what's happening?" "Not to worry," says St. Peter. "She's just having her head drilled to fit the halo." "I can't do this," says the old lady. "I'm going to hell." "You can't go to that nasty place," says St. Peter. "You'll be raped and taken advantage of." "Maybe so," said the little old lady, "but I've already got holes for that." You've been listening to The World at 8. I am Lynn Mozart and I wish you all a very good night and hope you all had a very good bank holiday. Killer who strangled and stabbed Gran for just £30 bought lottery ticket. Almost half of Czechs think EU vote is useless. That earthquake in Europe, its far-right gains in parliament elections. 6 legs tasty. First edible insect farm opens in US. Iran billionaire executed. And finally, 2 for 1 day. Thought for the day, will we or won't we? Well, excitement over for another 5 years, thank God. I have never seen so many untouchables chasing so many uneatables in a very long time. Of course we have our share of "oh God, we're finished." Yeah, I personally and frankly think it's a waste of time and energy. If we do stand parliamentary candidates, it will be just for show and putting our valuable people in line for some British National Party supporters to have a vote in a certain area. But when you get down to reality, why all the expense and trouble for a majority of people who in essence don't really care? The one thing about my thoughts is that they are just that, not party policy nor party motives or MOs for the future, but mine, all mine. With the result I can say what I feel without changing party policy or actions in any way. Apparently we are being exhorted to chase parish and local councillor places and take up local issues. Now we have in many areas not lost this particular cause, and indeed in the local elections on the 22nd won and kept more than a few of those, to which congratulations are in order. However, some people who listened to the interviews on World 8 and Monday apparently had problems with the statements over local councillors. Of course, Nick and I were talking about the ones who were not voted in again years ago and the fact that HQ are thinking of training new people to apply for jobs as councillors, when the problem was in many cases the fact that many of these people were not trained to do the job once getting the job. The problem with what I call proper local councillors who are standing under the flag of the BNP occurred some years ago when in many regions new local BNP councillors got a great many council places. The problem wasn't the getting into council, it was the problem a few had with actually.
You're listening to The World at 8 with Lynn Mozart. The World at 8, the #1 in nationalist news.
Highlights of the news today, Wednesday the 28th of May 2014. Thought for the day, will we or won't we? Police investigate Attleborough Church hate incident after sign suggests non-Christians will burn in hell. Somerset paedophile escapes jail despite browsing indecent images of children in public libraries. Grovel, grovel, combined with the ever-ready illusions of leadership challenges in the air, and as we all know, not only are these illegal at this time, but who in their right mind would want to lead a so-called finished party? So results were exactly what we predicted. NG lost out, but good for him for trying what was an already lost cause, and we will have the marvellous benefit of him back in the UK and on the job with the British National Party full time. All winners, I believe. Remember, you never lose at chess, you merely come second. Leave Europe to the far right, bless them, to sort out. The UK is unhappily a very different kettle of stewed and rancid fish, I'm afraid to say. Well, not really afraid to say, of course. But will we, won't we go to the ball next year?